The sound of designer heels clicking against the polished marble floor announced Amara Davis's arrival at the private jet terminal of Westbrook International Airport. The place exuded exclusivity, with sleek architecture and soft lighting reflecting the wealth of its clientele. Dressed in a tailored ivory pantsuit that radiated confidence and poise, Amara moved with the composure of a woman who had fought hard for every ounce of her success. Behind her trailed Emily Carter, her assistant, carrying a slim briefcase and exuding efficiency. Emily, with her ever-watchful eyes and brisk movements, was the kind of ally Amara knew she could rely on in any crisis. Amara paused to admire the Aurora, her newly acquired private jet parked just outside the window. The jet was more than a luxury, it was a testament to her journey from a small apartment in Atlanta to the pinnacle of the business world. The acquisition marked a milestone, a reward for years of grit, sleepless nights, and unrelenting ambition. "Miss Davis?" A voice interrupted her thoughts. She turned to see a man in a crisp pilot's uniform. His name tag read Jacob Miller, and his sharp features were set in a neutral expression that leaned toward condescension. "Yes," Amara replied, her tone even and professional. "I'm the captain for this flight," Jacob said, barely glancing at her. "Can I help you with something?" Amara's brow furrowed slightly. "I believe you'll be flying me today. This is my aircraft." For a fleeting moment, surprise flickered across Jacob's face, but it was quickly replaced by a thinly veiled skepticism. He hesitated, then said, "You're the owner?" His tone was polite enough, but the undercurrent of disbelief was impossible to miss. Amara's smile didn't waver. "Yes, I am. Is there a problem?" Jacob's hesitation stretched into an uncomfortable silence. Finally, he cleared his throat and said, "I'll need to verify that. It's just protocol. You understand." Amara tilted her head, her calm demeanor concealing the storm brewing inside her. "Protocol? For the owner of the aircraft?" Jacob shifted on his feet. "I'm just doing my job. Ma'am, if you could wait in the lounge while we sort this out." Emily bristled beside her boss, but Amara placed a hand on her assistant's arm, a silent command to stay calm. "Of course," Amara said smoothly. "I'll wait, but I'd like to remind you, Captain Miller, that I expect this matter to be resolved quickly." As Amara walked to the lounge, her heels clicking purposefully, the weight of the stares from other passengers and staff bore down on her. Whispers floated in the air like poison, insinuating judgments she had fought her entire life to overcome. Inside the lounge, Emily's composure broke. "Can you believe the audacity of that man?" she hissed, her voice low but charged. Amara sat down, folding her hands in her lap. "It's not the first time I've been underestimated, Emily, and it won't be the last. But we don't win by losing our composure." Her phone buzzed, and she glanced at the screen. It was a message from her attorney, Danielle Torres. "Danielle, he's out of line. Keep calm. We'll handle this." Amara's lips curved into a small, determined smile. "Let's see how this plays out," she murmured. Minutes stretched into an hour. Other passengers, mostly white men in expensive suits, came and went without a hitch, boarding their flights with ease. Amara's presence in the lounge, however, seemed to become an oddity, a spectacle for idle curiosity. Emily worked furiously on her tablet, compiling proof of ownership, contracts, and receipts to send to Danielle. Meanwhile, Amara maintained her calm exterior, though each passing second felt like a test of her patience. Jacob reappeared, accompanied by Sarah Mitchell, the terminal manager. Sarah's expression was one of awkward unease as she approached Amara. "Ms. Davis, I'm terribly sorry for the inconvenience," Sarah began, but Jacob cut her off. "We're still waiting on confirmation of ownership," he said curtly. Amara stood, her presence commanding the room. "Captain Miller, my team has already provided all necessary documentation to your company. If this is about protocol, I'll expect an explanation for why no other passengers are facing similar delays." Jacob's jaw tightened. "It's not about you personally, ma'am. We just need to ensure everything is in order." "Not about me personally?" Amara repeated, her voice calm but laced with steel. "If that's the case, then why am I the only one sitting here while others board without question?" The tension in the room was palpable, and the murmurs of onlookers grew louder. Amara took a deep breath and turned to Emily. "Get Danielle on a video call," she said quietly. Moments later, Danielle's sharp, no-nonsense face appeared on the screen. "Ms. Davis," she said, her voice crisp. I've reviewed everything. Captain Miller has no legal grounds for this delay. You're within your rights to demand immediate boarding or to escalate this matter. Jacob's expression darkened as Danielle continued. I'd advise the captain to reconsider his position before this becomes a legal matter with severe consequences. For a moment, Jacob looked like he might argue. But something in Danielle's tone, or perhaps the weight of Amara's unflinching gaze, made him falter. I'll check with the company, he muttered before walking away. Amara sank back into her seat, her composure unbroken. Emily leaned in and whispered, "You handled that brilliantly." Amara smiled faintly. "This isn't over yet." As the lounge settled back into an uneasy quiet, Amara felt the familiar fire of resolve burning in her chest. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for every woman, every person of color, who had ever been told they didn't belong. The next morning, Amara woke to the sound of her phone vibrating incessantly. Groggily, she reached for it, only to see an endless flood of notifications. The video from the lounge confrontation had gone viral overnight. A fellow passenger had discreetly recorded the incident and uploaded it, tagging hashtags like #racism in aviation and #Amara Davis deserves better. Amara watched the video, a knot forming in her stomach as Jacob's condescension played out on screen. Comments ranged from messages of support to vitriol questioning her success and legitimacy. Emily barged into the room, holding her tablet. It's everywhere, Amara. News outlets are picking it up. Some are calling it a clear case of racial bias. Amara set the phone down, exhaling slowly. This isn't just about me anymore, she said. It's about what this represents. Danielle needs to know. Amara's penthouse buzzed with activity that afternoon as Danielle Torres arrived with her legal team. The living room transformed into a war room, with documents, laptops, and phones strewn across every surface. Danielle outlined their approach with a no-nonsense tone. We're filing a formal complaint against Jacob Miller and the airline for discriminatory practices. But we'll need more than the video. We need witnesses, records, a paper trail, anything that shows a pattern of behavior. Emily chimed in. I've already compiled proof of ownership. And I'm pulling records of how other passengers were treated during the same period. Danielle nodded. Good. We'll also leverage the public outcry. The airline will want to resolve this quickly to avoid further damage to their reputation. Amara listened intently. And if they don't cooperate? Danielle's eyes gleamed with determination. Then we take this to court. As Danielle's team delved into the airline's operations, startling patterns began to emerge. Jacob Miller wasn't just a rogue pilot. He was part of a broader culture of bias. Emails and logs. Internal emails hinted at systemic issues, with coded language describing certain passengers as high maintenance. Witness accounts. Former employees came forward, sharing stories of implicit bias and unfair treatment of minority customers. Jacob's record. A deep dive into Jacob's history revealed prior complaints, all swept under the rug by the airline. The findings ignited Amara's sense of purpose. This isn't just my fight anymore, she told Emily one evening. It's about holding the entire system accountable. As the legal case gained momentum, the media frenzy intensified. Amara found herself thrust into the spotlight, hailed as a symbol of resilience but also targeted by detractors. Support. Activists and public figures voiced their support for Amara, amplifying her story across social media. Opposition. Detractors questioned her intentions, accusing her of seeking attention or exaggerating the incident. Personal toll. Amara faced threats and hateful messages. Testing her resolve, Emily became Amara's shield, managing her schedule and filtering the negativity. You don't have to read any of this, she insisted, but Amara shook her head. I need to see it. I need to understand what we're up against. The airline responded with a public statement, expressing regret for the misunderstanding, but denying any wrongdoing. They claimed Jacob's actions were in line with standard protocols and accused Amara of escalating the situation. Danielle's frustration was palpable as she slammed the statement on the table. They're doubling down, hoping the public will forget. Amara leaned forward, her voice steady. Then we'll make sure they don't. The legal complaint was filed, and the case moved into mediation. Amara attended the sessions with Danielle by her side, facing off against the airline's team of lawyers. Tense negotiations. The airline attempted to offer a settlement, but Amara refused. "This isn't about money," she said firmly. "It's about accountability. Media strategy." Danielle worked with a PR consultant to ensure Amara's narrative stayed in the public eye. Countering the airline's spin, personal stakes, Amara's friends and family urged her to settle, worried about the toll the case was taking on her health and business. Amara's determination never wavered. "If I give up now," she told Danielle, "what message does that send to every little girl who looks like me and dreams big?" A breakthrough came when Liam Crawford, a former airline employee, contacted Danielle's team. Liam had worked under Jacob and witnessed his discriminatory behavior firsthand. In a confidential meeting, Liam shared his story. Jacob always had a problem with authority figures who didn't look like him. He said, "I saw him question passengers like Ms. Davis before, but no one ever did anything about it." His testimony became a cornerstone of the case, bolstering Amara's claim and shifting public opinion further in her favor. The courthouse buzzed with anticipation as the high-profile case of Amara Davis versus Crestline Aviation began. Media outlets camped outside, capturing every detail of Amara's arrival. Clad in a sleek black suit that exuded authority, she walked up the courthouse steps flanked by her attorney Danielle Torres and her assistant Emily Carter. Inside, the courtroom brimmed with tension. The airline's legal team, led by the polished and ruthless Gerald Stanton, sat opposite Danielle's team. At the defense table, Jacob Miller looked visibly uncomfortable, his once arrogant demeanor now replaced by a thin veneer of defiance. The judge, Honorable Elena Morales, called the court to order, her presence commanding but impartial. "This court will examine the case with fairness and objectivity," she declared. The opening statement set the stage for what was to come. Danielle painted a picture of systemic bias, describing Amara's experience as the tip of the iceberg. Gerald Stanton countered, claiming the airline had acted in accordance with policy and accusing Amara of exploiting the situation for personal gain. Danielle wasted no time presenting her case. She methodically laid out evidence, beginning with the ownership documents and internal communications from the airline. Key exhibit: an email chain in which Jacob Miller expressed skepticism about Amara's ability to own the jet. One line read, "I just don't buy it. Who's she kidding?" The jury murmured audibly at the blatant bias. Witness testimony: Emily Carter testified about the humiliation Amara endured in the lounge, her voice steady but impassioned. Video footage: the viral video of Jacob's confrontation with Amara was played, its impact palpable as the courtroom absorbed the pilot's dismissive tone. Tensions in the courtroom rose as Gerald Stanton attempted to undermine the evidence. He grilled Emily on the stand, suggesting she was exaggerating the events. Danielle's objection was swift. "The witness's testimony speaks to the truth of what occurred. The defense's speculation is irrelevant." The judge sustained the objection, her gaze sharp as she warned Stanton to tread carefully. When Jacob took the stand, his demeanor was defensive. Stanton's questioning painted him as a professional following standard protocols. "I was simply doing my job," Jacob repeated, avoiding eye contact with Amara. Danielle's cross-examination was razor-sharp. "Captain Miller, can you explain why none of the other passengers were subjected to the same level of scrutiny as Ms. Davis?" Jacob squirmed. "I can't recall the specifics." Danielle pressed further. "Is it your standard protocol to dismiss an owner's documentation as insufficient? Or did you single out Ms. Davis for another reason?" The silence was deafening. Jacob's face flushed as he stumbled over his words. It wasn't personal." Danielle's voice grew cold. "Wasn't it?" Midway through the trial, Danielle introduced a surprise witness, Liam Crawford. Liam took the stand, his voice steady but charged with emotion. "I worked with Captain Miller for 3 years," he began, "and I witnessed his biased behavior firsthand. He often made comments about certain passengers, questioning their status or ability to afford the service." Stanton's attempt to discredit Liam backfired when Danielle revealed an internal performance review that Liam had filed, which corroborated his testimony. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as Danielle drove the point home. Captain Miller's actions were not isolated. They were part of a pattern that Crestline Aviation ignored for years. As the trial progressed, the defense's case weakened. Stanton's attempts to paint Amara as overly sensitive were met with scorn, both in the courtroom and in the court of public opinion. Meanwhile, Danielle introduced more damning evidence. Customer complaints. Records of minority passengers filing complaints about unfair treatment under Jacob's supervision. Cultural climate. Testimony from a former airline executive who admitted that the company had a history of overlooking such issues to avoid bad press. Amara's quiet dignity throughout the proceedings only strengthened her position. She remained composed, her resolve evident to everyone in the courtroom. The closing arguments were a battle of ideals. Danielle's voice rang clear and powerful. This case is about more than one woman's right to board her plane. It's about the countless individuals who are judged not by their accomplishments, but by the color of their skin or the biases of others. The law demands accountability, and so do the people watching this case unfold. Gerald Stanton attempted to counter with an argument about procedural fairness, but it lacked the emotional resonance of Danielle's words. After days of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict. The courtroom fell silent as the foreperson spoke. We find in favor of the plaintiff, Ms. Amara Davis. The room erupted with a mix of gasps and applause. Amara closed her eyes briefly, a wave of relief washing over her. Danielle squeezed her arm in quiet celebration. The judge's ruling was equally scathing. Crestline Aviation was ordered to pay substantial damages and implement mandatory diversity and inclusion training across its staff. Jacob Miller's pilot's license was revoked indefinitely. Amara's victory reverberated across the media landscape. Every major news outlet covered the trial's conclusion, framing it as a landmark case in the fight against systemic bias. Amara became a household name, not just as a billionaire entrepreneur but as an advocate for justice. Her inbox overflowed with messages, ranging from congratulatory notes to heartfelt letters from strangers. One email caught her attention. A woman named Clara Jenkins wrote about her own experience of discrimination in the aviation industry, thanking Amara for her courage. Sitting in her office, Amara turned to Emily. "This can't stop with me. If there's one Clara, there are hundreds more." Emily nodded. "I think you know what you need to do." Within weeks, Amara announced the launch of Skybridge, an initiative dedicated to promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion in the aviation industry. The program aimed to 1. Training and awareness. Offer workshops to airline employees on unconscious bias and equitable customer service practices. 2. Scholarships. Fund programs for underrepresented groups to pursue careers in aviation, from pilots to engineers. 3. Advocacy. Partner with industry leaders to reform hiring practices and establish accountability systems. The announcement sparked an outpouring of support. Activists, celebrities, and even some airline executives publicly endorsed Skybridge, while others remained skeptical or silent. While many celebrated Amara's efforts, not everyone was on board. Supporters, community leaders and grassroots organizations praised the initiative, calling it a bold step toward systemic change. Critics, industry insiders claimed Amara's actions were unnecessary or divisive, framing Skybridge as an attack on traditional practices. Media backlash. Some outlets ran opinion pieces questioning whether Amara was using the initiative to redeem her public image after the trial. Amara took it all in stride, focusing on the work ahead. "This isn't about pleasing everyone," she told Emily during a late-night brainstorming session. "It's about doing what's right." Meanwhile, Jacob Miller's life unraveled in the aftermath of the trial. Public scrutiny. Investigative reporters uncovered more complaints against him, painting a damning picture of his career. Financial ruin. Facing lawsuits and unable to work in aviation, Jacob's financial stability crumbled. Personal reflection. In a rare interview, Jacob admitted his biases. "I made mistakes," he said, though his remorse was met with skepticism. The interview went viral, sparking debate over whether individuals like Jacob deserved redemption or permanent censure. Despite her outward success, Amara faced internal challenges. The stress of the trial and the pressure to lead Skybridge weighed heavily on her. Personal sacrifice. Late nights and constant media attention strained her relationships. Friends and family expressed concern over her health. Self-doubt. Amara questioned whether her actions were making a real difference or if the system was too entrenched to change. One night, as she read another hateful comment on social media, Emily found her sitting alone in her office. "You don't have to carry this alone," Emily said gently. Amara looked up, her eyes tired but resolute. "I know, but if I don't, who will?" The first major milestone for Skybridge was a partnership with several airlines to implement its training programs. The launch event, held in New York City, was a glamorous affair attended by industry leaders and activists. Amara delivered a keynote speech that silenced the room. This isn't just about changing policies. It's about changing hearts. Because true progress isn't measured by profits or prestige. It's measured by the lives we touch and the barriers we break. Her words resonated deeply, drawing a standing ovation. As Skybridge gained momentum, Amara began to find balance in her personal life. She reconnected with her estranged younger brother, Marcus, who had struggled to understand her world of wealth and power. Their conversations became a source of healing for both. "You've always been my hero," Marcus admitted one evening, "but I didn't know how to tell you." Amara smiled, her eyes misting. "You're my hero too. Don't ever forget that." Months later, Skybridge prepared for its first tangible milestone, an inaugural flight operated by a fully diverse and inclusive crew. The event was symbolic, a demonstration of what aviation could become under Amara's vision. The flight, departing from Atlanta to New York City, was aboard the Aurora, the very plane that had been at the center of the controversy. Amara personally selected the crew, ensuring a mix of backgrounds, experiences, and expertise. Captain Elena Vazquez, a Latina pilot with over 20 years of experience, long overlooked for senior positions. First Officer Kevin Owens, a young black pilot who had received one of Skybridge's new scholarships. Lead Flight Attendant Priya Patel, an Indian-American advocate for workplace equity in customer-facing roles. The atmosphere at the airport was electric. Media crews gathered to cover the historic event, and supporters waved banners reading, "Fly with Equality," and "Skybridge, a new era." Amara stood at the terminal, addressing the press before boarding. "This isn't just a flight," she said, her voice steady. "It's a testament to what we can achieve when we refuse to accept discrimination as the norm." This is only the beginning. As the plane ascended into the clouds, Amara sat quietly by the window, the hum of the engines soothing her. She reflected on the journey that had brought her here, the humiliation she endured, the trial, the media frenzy, and the relentless fight for justice. Captain Vasquez's voice crackled through the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Skybridge's inaugural flight. Today, we're not just flying from one city to another, we're flying toward a brighter future." Amara smiled, feeling a rare sense of peace. Skybridge's success began to ripple through the aviation industry and beyond. Corporate partnerships. Major airlines pledged to adopt Skybridge's training programs, acknowledging the need for systemic change. Scholarship growth. Applications for Skybridge scholarships soared, inspiring a new generation of diverse aviation professionals. Global reach. Amara's vision extended internationally, with partnerships forming in Europe, Asia, and Africa. Amara found herself traveling extensively, meeting with leaders and activists to expand Skybridge's impact. At every stop, she heard stories of people inspired by her journey, pilots who had almost given up, flight attendants who had been overlooked, and young girls dreaming of the skies. One day, Amara received a surprise invitation to a conference on workplace equity in aviation. Among the speakers was Jacob Miller. The news caused a stir, with many questioning whether the disgraced pilot should have a platform. Amara debated attending but ultimately decided to confront him. "If we're advocating for change, we can't shy away from difficult conversations," she told Emily. At the conference, Jacob delivered a halting speech about acknowledging his mistakes and the importance of growth. When Amara took the stage after him, the contrast was striking. "Accountability is the first step," she said, addressing the audience but directing her words to Jacob. "But true change comes when we stop making excuses and start taking action." Words without action are empty. The crowd erupted into applause, and Jacob's expression was a mix of discomfort and realization. Years later, Skybridge had become a global force, transforming not just aviation but industries across the board. Amara, now in her early 40s, was a sought-after speaker and advocate, her name synonymous with equity and empowerment. Her office walls were adorned with photographs and mementos, a framed copy of the verdict from her trial, letters from scholarship recipients, thanking her for changing their lives, a photograph of the inaugural Skybridge flight crew, smiling in front of the Aurora, Marcus visited her one afternoon, bringing her niece and nephew. Watching the children play in her office, Amara felt a sense of fulfillment she hadn't known before. "You've done something incredible," Marcus said, handing her a small box. Inside was a gold pin shaped like a bridge, a reminder of the bridges you've built. Amara hugged him, her heart full. The novel ends with a poignant moment. Amara boarding the Aurora for a personal flight. Reflecting on how far she had come. The plane was no longer just a symbol of wealth or status. It was a bridge to a better future. For herself and countless others. As the plane ascended, she gazed out at the horizon, her mind already on the next challenge. Because for Amara Davis, the fight for justice and equality was never truly over, it was a journey without limits.